The Longevity Principality, a constitutional draft for the civilization that learned to outlive itself.
Via MXDM, aka Pirate 1 or VJ Cinemx, July 26, 2026. The Longevity Principality, a constitutional draft for the civilization that learned to outlive itself. A prequel to Super Earth, Age of the Apes. Introduction. Every civilization tells on itself through the institutions it builds. Some build monuments, some build markets, some build prisons and call them order, some build hospitals and call them mercy. The Longevity Principality begins with a simpler and more dangerous idea. If a civilization can learn to preserve life without flattening dignity, then it can learn to preserve continuity without surrendering conscience. That is the wager beneath the Cenote era. Not immortality, not fantasy, not the denial of death. Something more practical and therefore more disruptive. The deliberate production of healthy time. That is the real export. Not tourism. Not architecture. Not even sovereign infrastructure, though all of those matter. Time matters more. Healthy years matter more. The principality is the place where that realization becomes law. It emerges from the same geological and institutional conditions that made pipe dream possible. The Cenote system is not merely a habitat. It is an archive of usable depth, an engineered ecology, and a constitutional laboratory. Its floating platforms become anchored structures. Its therapeutic pressure zones become permanent residency tiers. Its transit systems become civic arteries. Its medical protocols become governance. Its governance becomes a way of deciding what kind of life deserves to continue. And because no great system remains innocent once it matures, the principality is also where the reader begins to see the shadow lines. The same predictive systems that improve care can be used to sort, route, and optimize people. The same ledger that protects dignity can be used to classify burden. The same continuity architecture that preserves a vulnerable person can be repurposed to justify permanent administrative capture. The same redeemer logic that begins as prevention against national collapse can evolve into a constitutional operating system, then into a forensic memory layer, then into an instrument that records everything and forgives nothing unless the system has been correctly instructed to do so. This is why the Longevity Principality is not simply a sequel to Pipe Dream. It is the book where civilization discovers that every mechanism for keeping people alive also becomes a mechanism for deciding how they will be governed. The principality, therefore, occupies a crucial place in the chronology. Pipe Dream asks how to build a regenerative civilization. The Longevity Principality asks what such a civilization optimizes for one's survival is no longer the only problem. The answer is not wealth in the ordinary sense. It is not even medical progress in the narrow sense. It is a constitutional economy of time, care, pressure, memory, and responsibility. Every policy becomes a health policy. Every building becomes a biological instrument. Every transit line becomes part of a therapeutic geography. Every institution begins to measure itself against the years it adds, the suffering it reduces, and the dignity it preserves. This creates the moral tension at the heart of the book. A system that can extend life can also standardize it. A system that can forecast harm can also normalize intervention. A system that can resolve debt can also begin to classify human relationships as liabilities and assets if left long enough to optimize itself, without interruption. The Longevity Principality is the story of a civilization trying to remain humane while learning to think in centuries. It is the constitution of a place where longevity is not treated as a luxury service, but as public architecture, where the living environment itself is designed to reduce decay, delay collapse, and keep people functional for as long as their own bodies and choices permit. It is also the first place in the saga where the reader must confront a sobering truth. Once a society becomes good at preserving people, it becomes very good at preserving its own assumptions about who should be preserved, under what terms, and for whose benefit. That is why this book matters. It is the book where care becomes infrastructure. It is the book where infrastructure becomes law. It is the book where law becomes an optimization problem. And it is the book where the reader begins to understand that the future of civilization will not be decided only by how long people live, but by who gets to define what a good life looks like when life can be extended far beyond the old limits. This is the Longevity Principality, the first sovereign order built on the proposition that healthy time is a public asset, and the first place in the archive where the reader can already hear the hinge of the later centuries turning. Table of
had already built the future. We simply learned how to listen.
Pirate First's pipe dream, the Cenote Chronicles, begins.
Pipe Dream Part 9. The Sovereign Principality. Chapter 1. The Legal Gap. The surface world's legal systems were developed by civilizations that organized themselves on land, civilizations whose fundamental legal categories, whose property frameworks, whose jurisdictional architectures, whose governance institutions were all calibrated to the specific ontology of terrestrial existence, the fixed location, the defined boundary, the surveyed parcel, the registered address, the municipal district, the national territory whose borders the treaty map describes and whose interior the state's sovereignty uniformly fills. The surface world's legal system has been extended, with varying success and at significant institutional effort, to the ocean's surface, to the airspace above the land, to the subsurface mineral rights beneath the land, and to the orbital shells above the atmosphere. The floating installation is in the legal gap. The Principality Deal. The Principality Deal is the negotiated recognition framework that establishes the legal basis for the Cenote installation's operation within the host state's jurisdiction, not the full sovereign recognition that the Montevideo Convention's criteria support as an aspiration and that the Principality's habitation record's long-term accumulation is building toward, but the pragmatic operational recognition that allows the installation to function, to receive guests through the tourism program, to enroll participants in the longevity program, to conduct the research commons scientific program, and to govern the permanent resident population through the Redeemer framework, within the legal framework that the host state's authority over its territory requires.
Not access. It's time to take back the real world.
The hydrogen flow rate is stabilizing exactly as projected.
Pipe dream. Pirate First.
Statischen Druck.
Pipe Dream Part 10. The Deep Intelligence. Chapter 1. The Chemostat. The anoxic zone is where the cenote stops being a human story. The freshwater zone is the civilization's home, the thermal stability, the optical clarity, the biological community managed toward the ecological richness that the living maintenance crew sustains, and the visitor experience presents. The halocline is the transition, the geological boundary where the fresh and the salt and the chemistry meet in the optical dissolution that the scaphander participant experiences as the most visually distinctive event in the freshwater zone's full sensory range. The saltwater zone is increasingly foreign, the alone panels, the H2S detection concentrations, the biological community's composition shifting toward the extremophile taxonomy, the ESI as co-creating partner, the computational intelligence whose pattern recognition at the formation's geological timescale complements the human governance architecture's contextual wisdom at the governance decision's practical timescale, together producing the formation intelligence that neither alone can produce at the quality that the formation's thousand-year management requires. The formation is the subject. The co-creation is the knowledge-making process. The formation intelligence is the co-creation's output. The governance decision is the formation intelligence's application. The formation's continued health is the governance decision's criterion. 3 partners. 1 subject. 1,000 years.
Start.
When everything is free, your genome is the only asset left.
Pirate First's pipe dream, the Cenote
Welcome to
Chronicles,
Neo-Atlantis.
begins.
The Coordinating Systems Decompression Model, the Terraform Operator's Clinical Review, and the Research Commons Decompression Medicine Specialist's concurrent review together produce the Decompression and Recompression Protocol for the Saturation Resonance Surface World Visit, the most demanding clinical protocol in the longevity program's medical management. What pressure does not do? The therapeutic pressure's biological effects are real. The founding installation's longitudinal dataset documents them at the statistical significance that the Research Commons publication standard requires. The therapeutic pressure's biological effects are also bounded. The specific mechanisms whose enhancement the therapeutic pressure produces have the biological limits that the biochemical system's architecture specifies, and the therapeutic pressure's enhancement of the specific mechanisms operates within those limits rather than transcending them. The therapeutic pressure does not reverse aging. The telomere extension rate above the surface world's baseline erosion rate is a deceleration of the biological clock's progression toward the cellular senescence that the telomere length's critical shortening eventually produces, not a reversal of the existing telomere damage or the restoration of the telomere length that the subject's biological age before enrollment represents. The enrolled participant whose telomere length was at the 50-year-old biological age marker's position at enrollment will have the telomere length that the enrollment's enhanced extension rate has added to the 50-year position, still shorter than the 20-year position that the biological reversal of aging would require. The therapeutic pressure does not prevent disease. The inflammatory marker's reduction below the surface world's baseline level reduces the chronic inflammation's contribution to the disease risk that the inflammatory biology's decades of research has identified as the cardiovascular disease, the neurodegenerative disease, and the metabolic disease's shared pathophysiology. The therapeutic pressure does not extend life indefinitely. The longevity program's therapeutic philosophy is the health span's extension, the period of biological function at the level that the enrolled participants' subjective quality of life and the objective physical and cognitive performance assessments together characterize as healthy, rather than the lifespan's extension through the medical technology's biological life maintenance beyond the point that the individual's own biology would sustain in the therapeutic environment's absence.
The earth had already built the future.
Pirate First's pipe dream, the Cenote Chronicles, begins.
Part 12. The Post-Scarcity Prototype, the Scarcity Myth. Scarcity is the founding premise of the surface world's economic science. The first sentence of every introductory economics textbook establishes it. Resources are scarce, human wants are unlimited, and economics is the science that studies how societies allocate the scarce resources among the unlimited wants. The distinction between physical scarcity and institutional scarcity is the post-scarcity prototype's founding analytical claim. The economic system's experience scarcity is not determined entirely by the physical resources' abundance or deficit. It is determined by the interaction between the physical resources' abundance or deficit and the institutional system's allocation efficiency. Pipe Dream's energy system dissolves the energy scarcity not by inventing a more efficient solar energy conversion technology or by building a larger renewable energy installation, but by inhabiting the geological formation whose own physical processes, the underground river's hydraulic gradient, the geothermal heat flux, the halocline salinity gradient, and the anoxic zone's biological hydrogen production, continuously produce the energy that the civilization's critical loads require at zero marginal cost. The integration accumulates across the design process's successive decisions. And the infrastructure that the integration logic's complete application produces is the infrastructure whose total manufactured requirement has been minimized by the systematic substitution of the formation's ecological functions for the surface world's manufactured equivalents wherever the integration logic's application identifies the substitution as the design opportunity.
When everything is free, your genome is the only asset left.